First and foremost, I wanted to ask about just, generally speaking, how difficult something like this is for your company when you have a former employee who makes allegations about what's going on inside. Is it difficult?
Is it difficult when someone makes an allegation like that? I'm not sure I understand the
Well, I
question.
mean, just the idea that this is kind of an underhand softball question of, to give you an opportunity to sort of say, you mentioned, let me put it this way, I'll ask more specific. In the answer to your lawsuit, to Ryan Baxter's lawsuit, you mentioned that Ryan Baxter is harassing the company. Does it feel
Yes,
that way?
it does. It absolutely does. We've had to spend a tremendous amount of money fighting the multiple allegations that just kind of continue. And we absolutely feel like it's harassment.
Right. Is there, well, let me ask you, because I know you can talk more freely about this. What happened with Ryan Baxter? How did you lose him, and how did he become essentially an enemy of your company?
I don't know why he became such an enemy. I can tell you that things were not working out. We were not happy with his job performance, and evidently he was not happy being an employee here. I can tell you that it was a Friday late afternoon when he resigned. I would say roughly 6 o'clock-ish. Probably 3 or 4 people in the office, and I was at my desk right over there. Ryan came, took one step inside the door right there, would not even come and sit down and have a conversation, and says, "I'm resigning, effective immediately, unless you raise my salary to $200,000 and provide me with a particular type of software."
I see. So it really, go ahead, I apologize.
And that was, yeah, that's all right. And that would have been doubling plus another 50% of roughly his income. He knew that wasn't going to happen. He knew that wasn't going to happen.
So it was a demand. In other words, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it was a demand that he knew wasn't going to be met.
That's certainly what I would suspect, and especially since he had already cleaned out his office.
I see. Right. That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a pretty good sign.
Let me fix I'm sorry. Let me just fix the cable on your. In all fairness, I did this for Mr. Baxter too, because I just want to make sure it looks, so it's not sticking out and unkempt. So, please go ahead. I interrupted. I apologize.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you were speaking about the harassment.
Right.
And honestly, I don't have any ill will against Ryan. I don't know if he knows that or not. In email communications that I've had with him, I've stated that over and over. And I hope that he gets everything together that he needs to get together and moves on and has a great career and a happy life. But you have to understand the background here. I told you what Ryan did, and then he left. We had a few more words, and then he left. A few weeks later, he files an EEOC complaint against us that I provided you with a copy of. And he claims that he was terminated, and he was terminated because of his white race. He claims that he was discriminated against on the basis of race, and that he had complained about it a number of times, which is totally untrue. And he tried to take that angle. The EEOC dropped it, said that they're not pursuing it, but that he can obtain an outside attorney to pursue it if he wishes. Right. So I'll go ahead and go with the timeline. So fast forward, I don't know, a couple of 3 months, and we get a letter from an attorney with a draft copy of the suit that they plan on filing against us. And it says in a more expanded way what Ryan said in his EEOC complaint, that he was discriminated against because he was a white male, and that other managers in the company that were not white males were treated better than he was treated and made more money, And that was the reason for the suit. We called the attorney and said, look, you probably ought to know a little bit of background here. So we spoke to that attorney, and actually he requested to have lunch with us. We had lunch with him. We explained the background and a lot of the history, and he didn't want to pursue it.
Right.
So he drops it. Then he is wanting to get out of his non-compete agreement that he signed,
Right.
which we were completely amenable to, as long as we were able to retain a very narrow portion of that, relating directly to our direct competitors.
The apartment industry mostly, and that
Yes,
kind of
sir.
thing. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that makes sense. Let me ask you, because I have a couple of tabs in here right to the lawsuit, and one of them is one of the allegations he's saying is the defendant and its employees and management staff were engaging in activities that were illegal, which violated both state and federal law. I know that's a big general statement, but is any of that true?
Is any of
That
we violate federal and state law?
Basically, that's what he's saying. Is any of that true?
Certainly unknowingly. If it happened, no, absolutely, absolutely not. But
I mean,
let
'cause
me
that's-
tell you
go
one
ahead,
thing
that's
about
kind-
this also.
Go ahead, please.
With this lawsuit has already been thrown out of one court,
Right.
and
Because of
he has an arbitration agreement, correct?
Mhm.
And he's refiled it in another court, and we fully expect it to be thrown out as well. But absolutely, we work very diligently to comply with federal and state laws.
The before I move on, actually, I wanted to make sure, because you mentioned harassment, I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to mention the text message. I mean, obviously, you can't repeat the contents of it, but
No,
it's
and I wouldn't want to.
It's your belief and it's your employee's belief that it was Ryan Baxter on the other end of that text message.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What gave her that indication, just so we can try to validate it?
To the best of my knowledge, she was communicating with him.
I see. So this was part of an ongoing communication. So, in other words, she was.
I can only assume.
Right.
I can
see.
only
Okay.
assume. I've got one side of the story that our employee told us, and she gave us a screenshot of a text message.
So I want to go kind of like one by one down some of the allegations, so
Yes,
that
sir.
you have an opportunity to answer them in this forum. The first is the affidavits. And I'm generalizing here, but what Ryan Baxter is saying is that employees of NCS are signing affidavits as though they're the client on behalf of the client, but as far as the court knows, they're essentially pretending to be the client.
No.
Is that the case, or so they're not signing these affidavits?
Correct.
At all?
No.
I see.
What I believe Ryan is speaking about is a former employee who used to, she used to do the paperwork in getting suits together. Okay? This is after we have obtained an affidavit from our client allowing us to facilitate a lawsuit. That means gather the information needed
Right.
and assign it to a particular attorney. Okay?
I see. So
There was, and the person that did that, the person that used to do that, had been doing this for, I think, 20 plus years for a law office. Okay? And she would sign as the custodian of records.
Mhm.
Okay? And
Right.
to my knowledge, what that means is that she has the documents that the client turned over to us. To her knowledge, they're accurate, and she has knowledge of their documents and what they look like.
So what
And
she's
then-
go ahead. I don't interrupt.
And then they are assigned to a particular attorney. The attorney reviews it and then submits it to the court.
I see. So what she's swearing to isn't that she's the customer or the client, rather that she's just swearing that the filing is correct or something to that effect.
Correct.
I see. Okay. Just want to make sure.
That is, yes, that's
So,
to my knowledge
I mean-
what custodian of records is.
Right. I'm just going to verify just verifying the focus for you. And what I do is I'll start and stop. So this only records for a certain point of time before it ends. That one still looks good. Just making sure they're all rolling. Oh, and the phone. Yep, that appears to be going. Okay. I always double check because sometimes I get up and it stops somewhere along the way while we're in the middle of a conversation, and then you're like, can I ask you that again?
Sure.
So I think that Oh,
Yep.
I guess the question would be, no one had ever brought this up as being improper until Ryan Baxter brought it up, right?
That's correct.
I mean, he was
And-
the only one who had a problem with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
The person who had been doing this for 20 plus years, to my knowledge, at the attorney's office, didn't have a problem with it. The attorney that actually reviewed the paperwork before submitting it to the court didn't have a problem with it. Evidently, the judge didn't have a problem with it. I've actually spoken to another attorney that we use currently, and I explained the situation, and then I explained what Mr. Baxter suggested, that all of those judgments be set aside, that we file motions to set aside. He actually laughed and said, that's ridiculous.
Wow. So, okay, that sort of takes care of that, unless there's something else you want to add on the affidavits.
No, sir, I don't
if
believe
there's-
so.
Okay, don't let me move along if there's more you want to say. The other one is the interest question. So he makes some very serious allegations, I guess you could say, if they're true. Does NCS collect interest payments from judgments and keep the entire interest payment, or do you split it with the customer, the client, as part of the contract?
It depends.
I
We've
see.
done it both ways. It's common to do it both ways in the collection industry.
It depends on the agreement, I imagine, right?
It depends on the agreement.
Right.
We're in 100% compliance with our agreements with our clients, but it really depends on the particular interpretation, and it's done both ways. We've done it both ways. Okay?
So did he, what he's saying is, or at least what he told us on camera, is that he says, Ryan Baxter says he brought to you as the CEO his concern that there were these interest payments that were essentially being kept by the company and not being shared with the clients.
Yes.
Do you remember that conversation?
I do. Absolutely do.
And did he say this is improper or illegal at the time?
Yeah, he did. And I totally disagree with his statement there. But also told him that I didn't have a strong opinion one way or another as to how we handled it. It's such an inconsequential amount. Brendan, it's...
Compared to the principal, yeah.
No, I'm talking about just in general.
I see.
It equates, I went back and looked,
Mhm.
and based off of Ryan's figures, okay, which are high,
Mhm.
okay, he's over, we're talking about 1/2 of 1/10 of 1%. This is so insignificant. Additionally, the whole reason why for a period of time that we did not remit the interest that was paid over and above
Mhm.
the amount of the account that was turned over to us is because we would get complaint after complaint from clients
Mhm.
saying, we can't post this. They'd send us the checks back. They say, we can't post this.
Right, because they didn't have a mechanism for it, because it's pennies, essentially.
No,
I mean,
because
comparatively
well,
right now.
no, because
I want to make
it
sure
was-
I understand.
Sure, because it was an amount that was over the original amount
I
that
see.
they turned over to us.
I see. So there's a judgment. The judge awards the company a certain amount based on your agreement. You get your part, they get their part.
Correct.
They consider the account closed, and then when the
Correct.
interest comes in, there's no account to post
They
it
can't.
to.
Correct. That's
I see.
correct.
I see.
And
So
it was creating an accounting problem for our clients.
so the
And
clients.
then when Ryan brought it up, I said, I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other. I'm fine with either way. Both ways are fine according to our contract with our clients, and whatever you're comfortable with.
So there's no instance where a client would have been in the dark about this. They would be aware that this interest existed and they weren't getting it, right?
I don't know if they'd be aware or not.
I mean, just kind of going with his allegation. The allegation is that there's this interest money that is at least partially due to the client in some cases, and the client's not notified that they have this amount that might be theirs.
If it is over and above the amount that was turned over to us, and all other monies have been paid, then yes, that interest payment may have been withheld by the agency, and of course the attorney takes their fee out of it as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess to wrap up,
And again,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and again, that is totally fine according to our contract that we have with our clients.
I see, that's helpful. The just generally speaking, there are a lot of allegations in here of impropriety and of illegality. Is there anything in his complaint that is true in terms of a violation of law or of regulations?
Not that I'm aware of. If you can bring up something specific, I can certainly comment on it, but we go to great lengths to be compliant with the law.
Right.
Okay?
I have a unique perspective in that regard.
Yeah, sure.
I used to run real estate for 25 plus years, served on the Atlanta Apartment Association Board of Directors for over 5 years. I did a lot of research before ever joining this company, and I was a customer of this long before I ever joined the company. We're really proud of what we've accomplished here. We've done a lot. We're proud to serve the clients that we have, and we're really proud of the results that we deliver. The allegations I've heard against Joel, it's really disappointing that somebody would make these allegations for an personal gain, because I've known him and worked side by side with him for many years and have never seen him conduct himself in the manner which has been suggested. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and we're very thankful and confident that the truth will come out.
Yeah, helpful, very helpful.
Yeah, Rick,
No, go ahead.
I know Rick as a client, and he knows me as being a vendor to him, as well as working on our team.
That makes sense. I know you talked right before we started the camera about that there, specific cases you may not be able to speak to. Sure. I, of course, has to ask. I have to ask because they're referenced in the complaint. And we also talked to one of the consumers who validated some of the things that were said. So my question would be, Austin Case, he's to sort of set the stage for this, he's the only specific consumer case that's mentioned in the complaint. At any time, did the collector say to Austin Case, you have to prove you don't owe the money? Instead of, when he asked for validation, he says he asked for validation and was told by this company that he had to prove he didn't owe the money. Is that true?
I wouldn't know. I mean, that's one complaint that happened. When was the date on that?
It was 3 years ago. Yeah.
3 years ago?
Yeah. But I mean,
wouldn't have any. Look, if that did happen, that would not be according to our policies and procedures.
Would it also be a violation of the FDCPA?
And if it did happen, and we found out about it, then there would be repercussions for that particular collection representative. Yeah, we don't look.
Please go ahead.
People are people; they're not perfect, and we're not robots and not machines. But if someone is saying something that doesn't comport with the law, we go to great lengths to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, then we take corrective action.
In this case, Ryan Baxter says he came to Ron Sapp and said this happened, played him recordings, and they both agreed that a violation of law had occurred. In this case, according again to Ryan Baxter, the call taker, Mr. Harris, was not fired because Ron Sapp told Ryan Baxter that collector makes us too much money. He said, this is
Claims
quoted
that I said that.
No, he claims
As I
that.
recall.
No, he claims that. Well, at least
As
to
I
us.
recall in the complaint.
Okay, in the complaint, he maybe switched it because to us, he said that Ron Sapp told him, Joe will never fire him because he makes us too much money.
That is what the allegation is. That is absolutely not true.
Okay.
Absolutely not true.
So-
And
go ahead, sorry.
not only do we say that, we have done that in the past. If a collection representative does not comply with the law, no matter if they're a wonderful employee or not a wonderful employee, we have progressive discipline, and if the actions continue, then they are terminated.
I see.
And frankly, that's what happened in this case.
So this guy was fired. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So this
At
guy
a
Harris,
later date.
he was fired.
He
Not
was.
for this, but for something similar.
I do remember the particular incident that resulted in his termination. And I don't believe that representative violated the law, but he let the consumer get to him. He was called a racial name.
I see. In response.
And he didn't hold his temper as we require.
Wow. Wow. It's stunning.
And it's unfortunate, but our representatives have to be able to hold their temper and to be calm and professional at all times.
Please go ahead. Were you going to say something? So I told you we got some things that were sent to the Attorney General.
Sure.
Yeah, here it is. I want to make sure you have a chance to look at this because it's, here, I can give you both a copy here. Sorry. This is, and I have one too.
Okay.
So this is a letter that was received by the Attorney General in Colorado in the Austin case situation. And the part I've highlighted is it says, unfortunately, NCS was unable to locate the recordings for the calls referenced in your request. What would be the reason for not being able to locate recordings? Aren't all your calls recorded?
For the most part, but he is a remote employee, and our recording system isn't perfect. It goes on, it goes off sometimes. That's not typical, but again, I can't really comment on this particular situation because I don't know the details on it. I haven't dug into the details on this particular complaint and what happened.
Well, I mean, I understand that. It's just respectfully, this is the only case in the lawsuit. We told you we'd be asking you about what was in the lawsuit, and this is the only incident.
Yeah.
I figured, you would look it up, but obviously I can't force you to do that.
Well, there would be quite a bit of investigation that would be needed to get to the bottom of this situation. I can tell you this, though. I did ask Mr. Sapp about this, and he said that he remembers a little bit of it. He went and did a very cursory look at the file and did find a letter that Mr. Baxter had sent to the Attorney General saying that that he found no violation of the law.
Right.
It was a letter that Mr. Baxter sent.
Right. There was a first correspondence, and then Mr. Baxter wrote back on behalf of the company, and then there was a second correspondence, which we also have, that says the Attorney General specifically asked for recordings, and this company specifically said they do not exist. Is it still the contention of this company that these recordings don't exist?
I don't have specific knowledge of it. This certainly wouldn't be according to our policies and procedures. Right. If the recordings actually existed.
I mean, the case,
but I don't know.
In later in this letter, it does close the account. We have the recordings.
Okay.
We have obtained the recordings, and if we have them, and I'd like you to listen to a sample. I have the whole full recordings, which I can play for you. Unfortunately, they're 30 minutes long. Hold on. But if we have the recordings, and we have a letter to the Colorado Attorney General saying the recordings don't exist, how can those two things both be true?
I don't know. I would have to look into it, and we would have to investigate it further.
But
I don't.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You got to remember, I'm not. This is not the area that I'm over.
I understand.
So this is something that I wouldn't be prepared to go into detail about.
I understand.
And also, I'm not sure we could even do that based
Given
on
the
federal law.
FDCPA, right?
That's correct.
There's a portion on here. I've cut 30 minutes down to 247. So I've edited it, obviously. So just full disclosure in that regard. Right. But I've edited it down to the relevant portion, which appears to be the part that the consumer complained about. Out of 30-something minutes, there's 17 minutes of hold. This particular collector seemed to use hold as a technique, to put somebody on hold and let them kind of simmer for a while. I mean, that's an assumption on my part. But let me play it for you just so you can listen to it and tell me, because I can't interpret it as a layperson. It might be helpful for you to tell me what we're listening to, even generally if you can't speak specifically to the case.
National Credit System, may I help you? What is your name, sir?
Austin Case, CAI-SSE.
They went ahead and sent the account to collections.
Kind of sucks getting, a notice for $1,000 2 years after you live in an apartment that you left with, spick and span almost. So I would love for them to have the proof before.
Well, the proof is, no, I'm not laughing, sir, at you, but
I would like to challenge it if they don't have pictures.
you can
I was
challenge it.
told by
You can challenge it because our company policy is if you tell us you disputing something, even if I know you owe the money, I'm going to put down here to disputing because it's our policy. And what it's going to come down to is this. When you decide you want to dispute something, we are going to certainly mark it as a dispute and acknowledge your dispute, but ultimately you're going to have to produce some proof to substantiate your dispute. If they don't have to provide proof, you do. So if you...
I have proof. I have a move out of the 4 months of when I moved out.
That's not proof. That's not proof. That's not
For
proof.
me, the Cascade tenant and the other guy.
That is not proof, Mr. Casey. That's not proof. You allow...
I'm gonna go ahead and call someone else because you're gonna argue with me with this, and I'm not gonna take it.
Austin, listen to me. Do me a favor. Do me a favor, Austin. Don't ever call me back again, okay? I'm going to document that you disputed the account because you're one of those people, you don't want to hear the truth and you don't want to accept the truth. You let those people stay in there. You allowed yourself to stay on that contract. Whatever they did to that apartment, whatever kind of damages they did, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Because, well, then guess what? They don't have to let you off. They don't have to. That's right, but you legally got yourself on there, didn't you? Okay? So I'm going to let you go, and it'll go on your credit and your loan history, and you can just deal with it from there, okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's a subsequent call.
This is Austin Case.
You're contacting National Credit Systems, a debt collections firm. This is an attempt to collect a debt information obtained for that purpose, counsel recording. I've already notated the conversation we had earlier, sir, and I have already requested a copy of the charges to be mailed out to you. So you'll get them and see what they are, and then you can take it from there.
Okay, now, I did know that we're challenging it, so it cannot be reported to
Mr. Case, yes, it can be reported to the credit bureau. Simply because you're disputing it, sir, does not stop it from being reported to the credit bureau, sir. But I am going to, Mr. Case, it doesn't stop it from being reported to the credit bureau, but we have to report.
If you do report me to the credit bureau,
I'm going to let you go. Because you're not going to call in here and just talk over me like that. Okay? You don't know what you're talking about, sir.
Okay, and it cut off. I think he actually says he hung up.
I don't like that one bit.
So, no, yeah, let me ask you.
Absolutely. I don't like that one bit.
What part? I'm sorry, go ahead.
The professionalism. Terrible professionalism.
So
That was a horrible call.
I see. So that's not typical of your company?
No, absolutely not.
Had you heard that, would that collector be out of a job based on that call, or at least counseled?
At least counseled. Whether out of a job, I don't want to speculate on that, but absolutely he would be counseled, and we would go a step further in all likelihood and issue, we call a fine, against his bonus, and that would cost him money. I don't like that at all.
There's a couple of times where the consumer asks for proof, which in the FDCPA is called validation. That we know the collector assumed that was what he was requesting, because in the later call he says, I went ahead and mailed you validation, basically. So it's sort of a self-proof that he knew he was asking for validation because he sent him validation when he called in the last time. Does the consumer have to prove they don't owe the debt? Or does the creditor have to prove that the debtor does owe the debt through validation under the law?
With validation, we typically send a copy of the charges, okay, an itemization of the charges, and a copy of the lease that they signed.
Yeah, I mean, it got kind of confusing where he was asking for pictures and that kind of thing.
Right.
But and it was a complicated situation. I have the whole call. I can kind of give you the background real quick if you want. So this is sort of my overview of it. There were two people on the lease. I know this happens all the time. Third person comes in, gets on the lease. He came off the lease. And then when the two guys moved out, there was damage to the apartment that's now imputed to him because he was on the lease originally, and he didn't do a move out walkthrough with the landlord. And so he felt he didn't know it, but the collector in the first call was really trying to explain to him, look, your name's on the lease, there was damage, and you owe $900 something.
Yeah, and he was being rude and talking over the guy too. I don't. Right. That's not what we do here.
Right.
Okay, and we have someone that does nothing but listen to calls.
Right.
Okay. And that does not comport with our standards whatsoever.
I know you haven't had a chance to look through this entire incident, and hopefully you will at some point. But if the Colorado Attorney General heard this recording, this would not have been good for NCS, would it?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, what I mean to say is this is not an ideal call to go to a regulator.
Oh no, no, I don't like that call one bit.
I mean,
Made that very clear.
I don't understand the FDCPA well enough to know, is demanding proof from a is demanding proof from a debtor rather than providing validation, or at least telling a debtor they have to prove they don't owe the debt. Wouldn't that be an FDCPA violation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, proving that someone owes a debt. I mean, how do you prove something? We have our documentation that's provided to us by our client, and we have to reasonably depend on the accuracy of that information when we're trying to collect the debt. And if a consumer disputes it, we mark the account as disputed. It's reported to the credit bureaus as such. We provide them with hopefully the information that they need to satisfy their dispute. But if they continue to dispute it, it continues to be disputed. It is reported as a disputed debt.
Of course. No, that makes, and I think what that collector said there made a lot of sense. I just want to make sure because I get lost here. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. There we go. Just, whoops, restarting. There we go. It's because this thing times out at when it hits 20 minutes. So, I mean, you can understand as a journalist when I'm looking at a letter that was sent to the Attorney General of the state of Colorado with the signature of your Vice President for Operations saying the recordings cannot be located. And then we not only have the recordings, we also have the emails showing where they were requested and the person from the floor who provided them. And then Ryan Baxter is saying on camera, now granted it's just his word, I'm a document guy, that he brought this to Ron Sapp and Ron said, you tell the Attorney General the recordings can't be found. And he said he refused and that he said Ron signed the letter instead.
If that's the way it happened, I would have refused too.
So if he came to you and said Ron Sapp told him to do this, there would be a problem.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, are you concerned to see a letter that says the recordings don't exist and then a reporter has the recordings?
Yes. Yeah. And certainly want to look into it and find out what exactly happened. But absolutely. Yeah.
This is the only thing, obviously, everything else is so amorphous in the complaint. But this, sort of jumping back big picture, what would you like to see happen in this case? Would you like to see the case dismissed? What would you like to see happen with Ryan Baxter individually and in terms of this case?
Sure. I wish Ryan the best. Okay? Things obviously didn't work out with us. There are, I think, a number of things that Ryan is dealing with at the time, then and now. I personally wish him the best, but I wish that he would just move on. Okay, I wish he would just move on. In this complaint, he's saying that he will, we can settle this, everything, all these problems if we pay him. I believe it was $423,000.
Right.
Okay.
This
is a shakedown. That's all that it is. It's all about money. It's been about money from the very beginning. He stood in that doorway and said, I need $200,000 a year or I'm quitting immediately.
This is an important question because normally when there's a pending lawsuit, every lawyer says don't sit down with a reporter when there's something like this. But you made it clear, although we had a long discussion of what the process would be and how it would shake out for me to be sitting here in your office now, but you wanted to respond to this.
Absolutely.
And you want to be sitting here defending this because why?
Our reputation. our reputation more than anything. And I don't think we have anything to hide. I think I've been very transparent here.
Yeah.
There have been, I'm not proud of that call. I'm not proud of that. The representative no longer works here because of a similar type of situation. So the process worked.
Right.
But I'm
Do
not
you know
going to
how-
sit here.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to sit here and say that I have no problem with that particular call. He was talking over the consumer. He was being overly aggressive, and that's not something that we condone.
You know, one of the things, I think one of the places that you and Ryan Baxter would agree, actually, he said on camera that this is a really tough job, that the collectors get called names, they, people literally wish you die of cancer, this kind of thing on the phone.
Sure.
This, I mean, again, this is another underhand softball question, but this is, you guys are always in the scope of regulators and journalists and that kind of thing. I mean, you said to me on the phone that, your fear would be that this would be a big bad collections agency story.
Yes.
This is kind of your opportunity to set the record straight in that regard too. What would you like to say about the collections industry, how difficult it is? And two, like I said, Ryan said to me, he goes, if you never had to pay your debts, our economy would break down. There's got to be some way to, enforce collection on debts that people legitimately owe. So what would you like to say to people about the debt collection industry?
I think Ryan said it very well, is that, with all we're trying to do is get someone to abide by an agreement that they signed and that they agreed to. And we bend over backwards to try to accommodate. We send out validation of the debt. We send out the charges. Right now, for the month of August, we're running we call it a sale, okay? To where we got the vast majority of our clients to agree to allow us to offer a 50% off deal if they pay the debt before the end of the month. And that's just to get it resolved, to get it done. That gives everyone, that gives a win to everyone. It gives a win to the consumer, it gives a win to our clients, and hopefully everyone's happy out of that. Those are the kinds of things that we do. We're a mediator. We just want to get this resolved and do a good job for our clients and be fair to consumers as well.
And so it's, I'm trying to think of another one. Oh, this is the other one. Back in the old days, 30 years ago, before the FDCPA, I mean, there were obviously, some questionable practices. It's really limited what you can do, right? I mean, you really have just the 3 credit bureaus and the rental credit bureau subset in order to, reporting to the credit bureaus is the only bullet in the gun, right? Pretty much.
No, I wouldn't say that. That's one. That's one repercussion for if someone chooses not to pay a debt. The other one is that in some instances there is legal action taken, and our clients some clients wish to pursue that, and some clients wish not to pursue it.
Right. I want to make sure I get this clear because you seem to want to make sure this is clear. So I want to give you the opportunity to do so. Is this call typical of NCS?
No. It's embarrassing is what it is.
I mean, Ryan Baxter said he heard worse, but he said he was, when he brought it to the attention of Ron Sapp, he said it was because of what he believed to be an FDCPA violation. That it was that the sort of, when we're asked for validation, asking the customer or the consumer for validation, that it isn't owed was sort of the violation. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, but the point I'm trying to make is that, the question I'm trying to ask is, I imagine you want to find out how this happened because, again, the letter and the call cannot both be true. You can't have a letter to an attorney general that's saying it doesn't exist and then it exists. And had that gone to a regulator, I don't know what would have happened. But it's certainly a call that, if it was my call, I wouldn't want going to a regulator. And so how did that happen? I certainly don't want to put any ideas in anybody's head, but because I'm literally an open-minded journalist, is it possible Ryan Baxter did this unilaterally without anybody's assistance?
It's possible, but I don't want to cast aspersions.
Okay,
I just
wanted
don't
to,
know.
because I don't know.
I mean, whether it's Ryan or anyone else, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus without having as many of the facts as I can before speaking. I will tell you that I have been wrong in the past when I felt very confident that this was a situation, and I look into it further, and there's some extenuating circumstances. So that's why I don't want to go down that road.
Have you thought of countersuing Ryan Baxter?
Not seriously.
I mean, you can't get blood from a stone. I mean, he's obviously in extensive medical debt by his own admission. But if everything he's saying is untrue, this is, devastating to your company because he's making allegations that you say are untrue.
I hope it's not devastating to the company. I absolutely do. But I want Ryan to move on with his life and to be happy and prosperous and get a great job. It's a wonderful economy. He's an attorney. Congratulations, Ryan, on passing the bar exam. I just would like for Ryan to move on and for him to leave us alone.
Is there anything else that you want to add, something we missed, something we don't understand? I want to make sure this is that opportunity to...
Thank you.
So whatever you want to say.
No, I don't believe so. Rick, do you have
not
anything
really.
else to add?
It's a difficult job. Sometimes people make mistakes, but I do know we do the right thing here. Whenever we find anything of impropriety, of course we'll deal with it. That's the nature of managing other employees. Sometimes mistakes are made, but I can tell you, we as a company take great pride in what we do and how we do it, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished here.
Thank you for that. I just did hit me. Do you have a compliance department? Are there people here who are just making sure you're complying with the law and that's their only job?
Not as you describe it. We have that broken up between several different people. Our managers are generally in charge of compliance having to do with collection representatives for their particular group. And then we do have an employee whose full-time job is to review calls and grade them both for compliance with the law and for professionalism and meeting our standards. And then those reports are also reviewed by other people in management, but there's not one particular person that is in charge of compliance.
I see. And, okay, I think that was all. So there was one more thing stuck in my head. What was it? Sorry, because I'm totally ADD.
That's okay.
And you saw, all my questions are, I'm responding to what you're saying and trying to make sure we're getting all of that information out. No, I think we've pretty much covered all of it. It was something along the lines of compliance, and lost my mind.
Can I mention something?
Of course, you can mention anything you want.
Sure. Can I mention something about maybe the allegations having to do with Ryan's termination and what happened
sure.
that
Yes,
particular afternoon?
Yeah.
First, like I mentioned, it was about 6 o'clock or so. In Ryan's complaint, he says that I followed him very closely, hollering at him on the way out, okay? And in front of 100+ people. Number one, I wasn't hollering at him. I did follow him out. I didn't know what he was going to do, okay? I didn't know what he was going to do. I walked probably 6 feet behind him. There are probably 3 people in the office in the 10,000 square feet, maybe 3 people. And he said I was hollering at him on the way out. No, I did say 2 things to him. I said, Ryan, this is not right. And I said, Ryan, this is a poor character. And he walked out and he got in his truck and he left. He had already cleaned out his desk.
Wow. Now, I do remember now what I was going to ask you is, Ryan Baxter says that at one point it was his job to answer requests from attorneys general around the country. He said he answered about 100 different requests from attorneys general around the country. He said during that time the only one he did not write, the only letter he did not sign is this letter. Would that tend to support his allegation that his boss asked him to do it and he refused?
Certainly the way that question is framed, sure, it's certainly possible. I hope not. But you know, I don't want to speculate.
I thought Mr. Sapp would be here, and that's why I brought this particular document. But that's fine too. Are you going to ask Mr. Sapp that?
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
Absolutely.
One more thing. There's a woman named Oma, and I apologize, it's not my notes. I haven't talked to her at all, but Ryan had sent me emails, or she had sent me emails, I guess at Ryan's request. Oma, does that sound familiar? OMA?
Well,
someone who worked here for
a
couple of decades. Yeah, she said she had essentially backed up a lot of his claims. Now, granted, I have not looked through them, I'll be honest with you, so I can't even formulate a question to that
just
effect.
a lot of his claims, like what?
Well,
what
I mean, just
claims
like that's why I wish I had this in my notes, and I don't. The only reason I bring it up is if, you know, Ryan is in the position of the disgruntled former employee. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years, and that's the character
Clearly.
he plays in the story.
Clearly.
And I think by his own admission, he's a disgruntled former employee. Would Oma fit that same category, or is she somebody who retired? I don't want to have you speak ill of anybody one way or the other. I just want to know who she is.
I don't think Oma is disgruntled, but I certainly don't know. I mean, she worked with us for quite a long time. Quite a long time, 15 plus years.
All right, I'll have to. I mean, it was her name on the record, kind of stuff. So I might even be able to forward it to you so you could look at it. I don't really have anything else to bring up. Is there anything else you want to add? With the idea too that if you develop new information and you want to send it to us, please let us know. Sure. Anything, whether it be documents or just a statement or anything to that effect. I just want to make sure that the bottom line that for us is fairness. And you know, the first thing I think I said to you is I'm aggressive but fair. I want to make sure you have every opportunity to, and that's why I've tried to stay entirely within the bounds of the complaint. This is a unique situation where you kind of laid it all out, where there was kind of, you kind of knew what I was going to ask, which was hopefully helpful. But.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to add is the collection industry has more than its fair share of bad apples. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. We're not one of them. We go to great lengths to operate totally above board and in compliance with the law and to serve our clients well. And that's why I've sat down for this interview. That's why I've been transparent with you. Are we perfect? No, we're human.
Right.
Okay.
And you mentioned
and if
before,
mistakes, and if there are mistakes that have been made, I want to know about them and I want to address them, and get them corrected. As it relates to Ryan, Ryan was treated very fairly. Very fairly. We actually created a position for Ryan. Okay? And I wish the best for him.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks. Anything else?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay.